What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Ryan Moody, Jimmy Smith, MMA Show. So, been a little bit. We wanted to do something a little different. Now, I get it when you clicked on the title. It's probably a little bit disheartening. But, listen, everybody talks about the greatest year that a fighter has. And we're going to do that tomorrow, as a matter of fact. But we wanted to switch it up a little bit and talk about the worst year a fighter had. And I want to just say, for both me and Jimmy, this isn't anything specific negatively about this person. It's just they had a bad year. Everyone can have a bad year. We're not saying this is the worst fighter of the year. We're just saying, in a way, this person had a really bad sequence of events happen for 365 days. So when we started this concept, I asked Jimmy, I said, do you have someone in mind? And you said, give me a second. So I just wondered, what was your criteria when determining who you felt had the worst year was?
I already had a fighter in mind. I was confirming that they fought in 2019.
The interesting thing, and people will probably not believe this, is we have no earthly idea who the other fighter we've talked about is.
Zero. We might have the same one.
If we do, I wouldn't be surprised, but it would also be very anticlimactic.
And we've discussed none of this. He literally said, you want to talk about the worst fighter? And I went, yeah. And he went, all right, let's record. You ready? That's pretty much it, just so everybody knows.
That's pretty much how all these shows go, just so everybody knows.
All right, so let's start with you. Who is your worst fighter of the year?
BJ Penn.
That is 100% a possibility. That, I think, is neck and neck with mine.
Oh, really? Well, let me lay out my thesis for BJ
Please,
Penn.
you first.
So, first of all, I hate to say in 2018, but literally days before the ball dropped for 2019, BJ Penn got heel hooked by Ryan Hall, where we all knew that was what was going to happen. He then goes out and fights Clay Guida. And I don't know if you remember this fight, but we talked about this as it was really one of the worst performances we've ever seen from BJ Penn, who was on a streak of pretty bad performances leading up to this. But this is a guy that literally in 2017 was headlining cards. Now barely struggles to actually make a prelim. And obviously, when you look outside the ring, he's been released due to some personal issues. So it seemed like just everything snowballed for BJ Penn this 1 year. And look, man, a couple years ago, this guy is generally regarded as one of the best athletes in the sport, had really one of the best resumes in terms of wins and truly losses to fighters that he'd fought. But he has completely taken himself out of the equation for any viability MMA. And it's, in a way, it's sad to see. I mean, the performances, the losses, those things happen. But all the personal things aside, he really can't look back at this and say, hey, you know, MMA is going to miss BJ Penn, because honestly, what he's done is just pushed him out of the sport and out of endearment from so many fans. And I think that's a shame more than anything else. I will say one caveat to this, though. If all those things got him out of the fight with Nick Lentz, that actually is a major positive for his year. Maybe that's why you didn't pick him, because BJ Penn wanted no part of Nick Lentz.
You know what reminds me of? The end for BJ Penn and a lot of fighters who hang on too long. I had an aunt who died, who was, at the time, 96, 97, something like that. And it was the weirdest funeral I've ever been to, because nobody cried. We all just sat there and kind of waited for it to be over so we could go get something to eat, because she had been out of it for so long. You know, dementia last few years and all this stuff, and I don't want to go into it, but it's like, she lived too long. She has lived too long. There was no tragedy in her no longer being alive. It was a relief to everybody. And when a fighter hangs on too long, when they finally leave, it's like that. It's like, oh man, this person just too long. Too many years doing this, too much damage. It's time for you to go. And to see BJ Penn go that way sucks. Now, here's my pick for worst fighter of the year. I would love to hear what you have to say about it. But my pick, TJ Dillashaw. And the reason I would put TJ Dillashaw ahead of BJ Penn for worst fighter of the year is, you could argue BJ Penn's slide started in 2011. It was the last time you won a fight. Can you believe that? He's coming up on almost a decade of futility, frustration, and loss. At the end of 2018, TJ Dillashaw, 2 wins in a row over his nemesis, Cody Garbrandt, knocked his ass out in the first round, in the last one, knocked his ass out in the second round, the one before that. A real comeback. A guy who is now champion, seemed to have the world on a string, ready to go. A lot of people put him in the, pound for pound top 5 at the time. He gets knocked out in 32 seconds by Henry Cejudo. He pops for EPO. And more than BJ Penn, he can't open his mouth or send a tweet or put something on Instagram without everybody going, "You doping motherfucker, shut up." That is a pretty steep fall. I would say BJ Penn might be in a worse place in that he can't fight his way back, which TJ Dillashaw could once he's done with suspension or whatever. But people don't look down on him like they do TJ Dillashaw. He got caught cheating. There's no other way to say it. He got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. And there are fighters out there and fans who understandably and justifiably will never forgive him. And considering where he ended 2018, that is about as bad as it gets to me.
You know what's so ironic about that pick is when we first discussed that card, we talked about the impact that would have on the ESPN Plus deal because that card really was a tragedy of errors. You had TJ Dillashaw after the quick knockout where he was questioning it, but you also had the drug failure. That was also the Greg Hardy illegal knee card. So that really didn't put the best impression of ESPN of the UFC after they made this massive, obviously, not only just in terms of money, but also in terms of, what they were building. They put a lot of time and resources into the UFC and getting that deal done. And likewise, this was a lot of validation for the UFC to be carried on ESPN, the same way the Reebok deal, really validated them in sport as being a top tier product. And this really was a tough start for them. Henry Cejudo, by the way, after that, both of those guys, literally, if you go back and you go into that card, you could have a very positive impression of TJ Dillashaw and Henry Cejudo. However, after that, you probably can't stand either one of them. For TJ Dillashaw, his career becomes a giant asterisk. And for Henry Cejudo, he really, was honing that cringe king mindset before that fight. Remember, he came out, he had that rubber snake and we didn't know exactly what it was and he slammed it into the stage. He was really in the infancy of making himself the worst, and I don't mean like the worst heel, like the way we talk about like Ted DiBiase was a heel. I mean just like the worst heel as in like you don't want to see the guy because it's so bad.
Yeah, I mean that's really started the cringe Henry Cejudo for sure. The lead up to that fight, and of course everything afterward. But it's I mean, how much do you think TJ Dillashaw will recover from this? And I think even if he does recover from it, and obviously there are different levels, he could win every fight from here on out, and people always go, "You're a doper, I don't care." That will follow him the rest of his career. But considering the heights he was at when this happened, oh my God, it's. I mean, he deserves it. It's his own fault. But that fall from grace, man, that's what makes him, to me, worst fighter of the year.
Let me ask you this, though, to try to knock the ball back into my court, if you will. You don't want to see BJ Penn fight anymore, right?
No.
Let me ask you if you would be interested in a current TJ Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt fight.
I might. Now, I would probably root against TJ Dillashaw, which I didn't in the beginning. But yeah, I might be interested in that. Once he does his time and kind of pays his penance, I agree that he should have a shot at, redemption and getting back in and all these things once he's done his time. I believe in that. So yeah, I see your point that I would watch TJ Dillashaw. I don't ever want to see BJ Penn fight anyone, anywhere, ever again, under any circumstances. I don't want to see him sparring. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when you go back and look, the John Lineker fight now with TJ isn't going to be something that can happen. Neither the Assunção or the Dominic Cruz fights would probably be a possibility. But I would really like to see if clean TJ Dillashaw can still knock out Cody Garbrandt. I don't know. That's, kind of one of the great things about MMA. We do get the option of finding out. It's so interesting, though, that you brought that up because we had talked before about the Bellator card with Rampage and Fedor. And I thought it was so incredibly odd that Rampage was in the garage and TJ Dillashaw was there training. And obviously that's where he's been training. That's where he's done his training. But at the same time, I was like, man, does Bellator know they probably shouldn't be showing a whole lot of TJ Dillashaw because, number one, people really don't like the guy. And number two, I mean, listen, in all fairness, you can't say Rampage was on anything performance enhancing. But
if he was, it didn't work. Return that stuff.
Right, if he was, get a refund. Exactly. But do you really want that guy, like, around your camp? Like, do you really want TJ Dillashaw out there doing wind sprints against Rampage Jackson showing off, and you're the whole time thinking, like, yeah, this guy might still not be clean?
Yeah, I mean, it's toxic. Toxic. It's just a toxic environment. It's one of those things where you're like, I don't want the guy anywhere near me or my camp. You don't want to be stained by it. And then you open up this new place like Fresh Juice or something. It's hilarious. Like every time he does anything, it's something juice. And every time I look at it, I'm just laughing my ass off. And the comments are just, they're so worth reading. And I'm not usually not that kind of person, you know?
Yeah, these are two guys that, if nothing else, have distinctly marred their careers in a very unique and irreversible way. But at the same time, I guess in a way that's kind of the way all sport works. You always have those guys that just, I guess, do too much to win in one aspect and then don't know when to stop fighting or doing anything to another aspect. And it's very interesting that both of them kind of crossed paths this year in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit weird. And I don't know. And going forward, I'm really curious to see about the value of TJ Dillashaw because the UFC knows they can use him again when he comes back, that at least for one fight, he'll generate some views. The problem is if he loses that fight and doesn't look sharp, it's over. The best part of you came out of a bottle. That's how everyone will see it. It's one or done, essentially, if he doesn't perform, because it'll be, you weren't that good to begin with. This, as you said, BJ Penn we will always have prime BJ Penn. And prime BJ Penn is one of my favorite fighters of all time. But with TJ Dillashaw, do we really have a prime TJ Dillashaw? Will we ever look back at those fights and not go, that wasn't real? That was fake. That's the hard part. We will always have prime BJ Penn. He could lose 50 in a row, and we would go, but, man, you should have seen him destroy Diego Sanchez and Kenny Florian and all these guys. TJ Dillashaw, when you look at his great performances, you'll always go, could be a little EPO in there. That's something BJ Penn will always have. He'll always have his prime. I don't know if TJ Dillashaw will.
Right, and the other side of that is, though, you're always going to have guys that are visible. Dominic Cruz is probably very openly telling people, well, the only reason I lost that split decision the only reason that it was close was because, TJ was on drugs. Cody Garbrandt will come out and say, hey, the only reason he knocked me out, he was on drugs. The only, and I don't want to use the word redeeming factor because there is no redeeming. The only, I guess, positive that I could take from this is that at bare minimum, TJ openly came out and said, hey, I cheated. I'm admitting I cheated. And I'm not only not going to hide from it, I'm going to tell you that I cheated to be the best. In a landscape where people will come up with tainted supplements, tainted meats, tainted products, I didn't know. At least I thought it was a bit refreshing that he came out and said, you know what? No, I wanted to be the best. I found the way to be better than I am. And I figured, hey, if I can be better than the person that I already am now, then there's no way that I'm not going to be beaten. And it caught up to me. And, it's kind of one of those stories in life where we all think about it at some point or another. We've all had decisions to go the right way or the wrong way. And in most cases, a lot of us elect to go the right way. Well, guess what? TJ Dillashaw elected to go the wrong way. And he got caught. But he also made that step of coming out and saying, listen, don't do this. Don't be like me. Don't take the path that I took, because as you can see, and as you so eloquently put, all it leads to is a legacy that will be ill-remembered and something you can never escape from. Like you said, he can't open a juice bar. Probably could have picked a better name and a better thing to open, but at the same time, anything was probably going to be met with that type of haste from people.
Yeah, it's true. It really is. And him, kind of coming clean, I mean, I guess, but you have to wonder, EPO, the nature of the supplement, he had no way out. It's injectable. You can't have it in a tainted supplement. You can't take it accidentally. It doesn't treat any injuries other than leukemia. There was no way out for him. He was cornered. So the fact that he came out and told the truth, I wonder if he had been caught with osterone or something else that he could say was a tainted supplement, if he would have said that. He did the one drug that you can't get away with because it doesn't appear as a tainted supplement and it doesn't cure anything. So he couldn't say, I had this injury and I was trying to, hurry it up and, repair from it. EPO doesn't do that. So was he honest, or was he in a position he couldn't help? Like, no lie was going to make any sense. It would have just made him look more foolish. So I don't know. I give him some credit for telling the truth, but also, would he if he hadn't been cornered? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a psychological question, right? I mean, how much did he believe his cheating helped him? He could have sat there, to your point, he could have sat there and said tainted test all day long. He could have said, hey, this was a USADA issue. This is not me, and I'm going to fight it to my dying day. And then, honestly, because the way the sport works, because there's so many fights, because there's so many fighters, this would have been quickly, I don't want to say forgotten, but quickly lost in the year and quickly not something that people talked about. So to a point, yeah, I think he could have just let it go away naturally because, people would stop talking to him about it after 6 months, much less 2 years.
Maybe, but I think the nature of the drug itself made that harder. You know what I mean?
The dog agreed. The dog agreed with me. I heard it.
Completely agreed. She's shaking her head. So to me, it's one of those things where you just have to wonder. The nature of the actual drug makes the whole tainted supplements and bad tests. EPO is just too. It's a different class. It wasn't picograms of the stuff. It was a lot. And I think it's one of those things where he may have just told the truth because he wanted to come clean, or he may have been in a position where doing anything but that would have dug him into a bigger hole. I'm just not willing to give him that much credit,
What I can tell you, in all honesty, is this will be one video where I really hang on the comment section. If you feel like Jimmy or I got it wrong, I would love to know why. But most importantly, if you feel like you've got a fighter that had a worse year than BJ Penn or TJ Dillashaw, you let us know, and we may even talk about it in an upcoming show. Other than that, we appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more content.